is on the impacts of standardized testing on classroom instructional methods and inquiry-based learning. Standardized testing, which has a long history that actually dates back to the 1800s, has greatly impacted the way instruction is carried out in the classroom. The teacher and administrative stress that is associated with standardized testing causes teachers to teach to the test rather than investing in pedagogies that nurture relevant skills of the century. The purpose of this research was to construct a more comprehensive definition of what it means for a student to be academically successful and to study the effectiveness of the inquiry-based learning pedagogy.
To address the first part of this research, an interdisciplinary approach is necessary. This approach involves economics and educational psychology. Both disciplines have different perspectives on what education is all about. Let's begin with the economic perspective. To get an idea of the economic perspective on education, it is important to take a look at an excerpt from President Reagan's 1983 A Nation at Risk, a document that essentially described how America's educational system was failing to educate students well. If only to keep and improve on the slim competitive edge we still retain in world markets, we must dedicate ourselves to the reform of our educational system for the benefit of all. The idea that education is strictly viewed as an investment to the economy is driven by the human capital theory. Human capital theory rests on the assumption that formal education is highly instrumental and necessary to improve the productive capacity of a population. This theory is backed up by several studies that show improvements in education accelerate productivity and contribute to the development of technology, thus improving human capital. So how does this relate to standardized testing? This push for educational reform continued in 2001 when the No Child Left Behind Act was passed. The act entailed many things, but one was its expansion of state-mandated standardized testing as a means of assessing school performance. Under the NCLB, schools receive an adequate yearly progress report, or AYP, if they meet nationwide standards. Upon receiving an AYP, schools also receive government funding, which brings us to another economic theory, mechanism design theory. Mechanism design theory seeks to study the mechanism by which a particular outcome or result can be achieved. It also accounts for individual incentives and how they can work for the benefit of the whole. Given the economic foundations of educational policies, under NCLB, monetary incentive is perceived as an effective way to boost test scores and therefore boost the economy. But does this really equate to student success? When the priority becomes raising standardized test scores, so does teaching to the textbook, rote memorization of facts, and teacher-centered learning. The psychology discipline provides a different perspective, which explains why this is not the most effective way to make students successful. Educational psychology involves the study of how people learn, including teaching methods, instructional processes, and individual differences in learning. As opposed to the economic discipline, the psychology discipline values the individual learner as more than a monetary gain to human capital. Additionally, psychology focuses more on the learning processes rather than just the outcome. Cognitive theory, credited to Jean Piaget, looks at the way people think. It highlights thinking about thinking to understand how thought processes influence learning. To a cognitive theorist, understanding how a student learns will lead to successful learning. A subset of this theory is Constructivism. Constructivist theorists believe that learners construct what they learn for themselves based off of what they know or from experience. Implications on classroom instruction include shifting the responsibility roles from teacher to student and providing hands-on learning experiences. Both disciplines provide valid perspectives, but the focus on learning processes from psychology doesn't align with the classroom implications that the economic theories have on education. However, we could still address both by changing what it means for a student to be academically successful. This brings us to the 4 C's of 21st century learning: critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. If students are given opportunities to engage in the most relevant skills of our technologically advanced world, they will not only be academically successful, but also productive members of the economy. One way to do this is through inquiry-based learning, and this brings us to the third discipline, philosophy. Inquiry-based learning finds its roots in ancient Greece, where the philosopher Socrates often engaged in what is now known as Socratic dialogue. In both Socratic dialogue and inquiry-based learning, both the teacher and the student ask probing questions meant to clarify basic assumptions. Furthermore, inquiry-based learning is a process that engages students by making real-world connections through exploration and high-level questioning. It is one of the pedagogies that, according to research, has the potential to engage the 4 C's. I had the chance to use inquiry-based learning in the classroom where I student teach. With this opportunity, I conducted research on the effectiveness of inquiry-based learning on engaging the 4 C's. This was measured by quantifying the number of opportunities for each skill to be engaged in the inquiry-based unit, and comparing it to the same data from a traditional textbook unit. The research also studied how well students retained information from both units with assessments, as well as the level of engagement of the students during both units. The results yielded that while students performed well on both assessments, traditional textbook learning yielded 25 less opportunities during a 5-day-long unit for the 4 C's to be engaged. In addition, it was observed that there was much more student engagement during the inquiry-based unit.
Overall, while as teachers we have little control over the demands of standardized testing, we can control how we implement instruction in the classroom. There is no right or wrong answer when it comes to the most effective pedagogy, but inquiry-based learning is a good place to start to engage the 4 C's of learning, ensure academic success, and produce individuals that are valuable to the economy. Thank you.